Today we're going to do a watercolor portrait and I'm going to talk it through step by step. So let's get started. I'm calling this portrait Watercolor Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen was a musician and poet and someone whose music I really enjoy, and you can check him out on YouTube. The words that he uses are just, he uses words like paintbrushes. So I've been doing a series of paintings of people that I really admire, and usually it's the music that I'm listening to. So today was Leonard Cohen. Now you can already see some test dabs that I put on the left on that scrap piece of paper. That was for a painting that I did before this, which was also Leonard Cohen, but it was he was in a different position. I didn't like the way that painting came out, so I left them there, and I'm not sure if I make color dabs during this next process or not. But mostly what I wanted to say about that is you can have a really bad painting happen, which happened before this, and then I can go away for about a half an hour, and it's almost as if my subconscious is thinking, almost organizing what went wrong in my head, or more importantly, what could go right. And I knew as soon as I spent that time away, I came downstairs and I thought, okay, I know exactly what to do. So I kept those color dabs nearby because they had been helpful in the first painting. So this is what I call step one. This is usually my step one, which is finding the darkest value spots that I can. And I'm using alizarin crimson, some ultramarine blue, and I think that's it. I think it just two colors for getting in those darks. I need to establish those darks. Now I can make them darker later, but for right now, that's as dark as I'm going to go. And I'm already into mid-tones. Now most of Mr. Cohen's face is a mid-tone. You know, it's a variety of kind of pinks and reds. And so I'm going to need to mix up a variety of those pinks and reds and plug those into the different value shapes that I see. So I began with, there are actually two colors going on here. There's a permanent rose, and there's also some cadmium red with a little bit of Naples yellow in it. And those are the only two colors that I'm using at this point. And I'm finding what I'm plugging in right here are the darkest of the mid-tones. So in other words, I'm always starting with my darkest darks. That's usually pretty easy to find in a painting. The next, and most paintings for me tend to be mostly midtones. I usually have a few darks, a few lights, and then most of the painting is in midtones. So what I have to do, or the challenge for me, is to find colors that will match those midtones. I'm not matching to the photograph. I'm matching only to shape. That's what I'm thinking the whole time that I'm working here. I'm thinking shape, 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 shape. What shape is that? What color can I use to make that shape? How does that color compare to the one that I use next to it? Is it a mid-tone? Yes, if it's a mid-tone, then I can use it. If it's not a mid-tone, then I will discard it or somehow make the mixture a mid-tone. All right, I noticed that his neck was very dark compared to the rest of his face. So I thought, all right, I need to go back into the dark that I began with and put that in. And I'm going to end up having to do the same thing about the hat. The other place that I noticed, which was dark comparative to the relative value of his face, was there's sort of a shadow cast underneath the hat. And I thought, okay, I can take care of that with that same mix that I started with, you know, that alizarin crimson and a little bit of ultramarine blue. So I usually like to finish with all my darks, then move into my midtones, but I realized with this painting that I needed to skirt back and forth. I needed to continue to work on the darks and then also, and then address the midtones. All right, here comes in the hat. Let's see, for the face I was using a number 10 flat, and for the hat I'm using a number 10 round. I find I can be looser with a number 10 round, and I thought I could use that in his face, but as it turned out, I don't remember if I did or not. I don't think I did. You know, his face has a lot of, even though it's an older face, and older faces tend to be a little puffier, he has a very angular face. And I think using the flat brush for that face kind of reminded me of that all the time. All right, time to dry things. Sometimes when I get to a certain place in a painting, I've established my darks, I'm starting to work in my midtones. If I don't stop for a minute and dry everything, I will carry on and kind of not follow my strategy. And I realized this is, first of all, I need to dry it. And second of all, I need to get centered here. I was starting to lose it a little bit. You know, you lose your concentration for just a second and bad things can happen. All right, back to the midtones. Now I'm feeling a lot more confident because I have those darks to compare to. The only rule now is I can't put in anything that's as dark as my original darks. I can later when I get to my final touches, but not now. So I keep the neck relatively dark, and I'm massing for value, mixing for color here, meaning that even though the entire face is sort of a pinkish face, I'm using a variety of different reds in order to address those shapes. If I address those shapes correctly and keep the value consistently mid-toned, then the eye will sort of make them all turn into those shapes that I desire, which is very different. It's a very different way of painting than saying, oh, I'm going to paint the eye, or oh, I'm going to paint the nose, or oh, I'm going to paint the lips. Nothing is discretely one thing. I'm looking at the overall whole, and all I'm doing is addressing it as shape. I don't ever ask myself, is that the way the eyes look? I mean, I'm just talking about the, what do you call it? Like the conversation that goes on in my head. Inside my head, I have to keep it really clean. I just say, what shape is that? What shape? What value? What color? What shape? What value? What color? What shape? What value? What color? And if I can hit that correctly each time, then I'll end up with a good portrait. All right, I realize now that the darks of the midtones were pretty good. Now I needed to go into the lighter midtones. And in order to do that, I tipped everything with a little bit of Naples yellow, and I think a little bit of cadmium yellow too. I decided that I wanted to maintain brightness, but I needed to come up with a color that was lighter than the reds that have come before. And I think I managed to do that. So those are the shapes. And I'm putting them very near each other. I put them very near, but you might notice I put down shapes and lines, but I don't rub. You're never going to see my brush going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. No licking. I want to make sure that I want to make sure of what the color and the shape is before I even apply the paint. That's why this is speeded up to 2 times as fast as I usually work. I think the whole painting probably took 30 minutes. So I'm very deliberate, but you could also call that very slow. I mean, overall, I guess it's pretty fast to do a portrait in like a half an hour. But on the other hand, I really try to make sure that that I don't put anything down until I've checked and double checked twice. You know, similar to a sewer. You know, if you're going to cut the fabric, you know they say measure twice, cut once. Yeah, same idea here. Yeah, and it's hard not to get ahead of yourself. All right, so I'm still in midtones. I'm going to leave some of the whites of the paper white, and that's why my sign off is remember to keep your paints wet and the whites of your paper white. Mass for value, mix for color. I'm still massing for value, and you can see things are starting to come together here. That is my goal overall. All right. It's so fascinating to do this because it's only about now, once I've really put in enough shapes and made enough decisions that kind of work, that I'll realize, oh, I think it's working. It's turning into Leonard Cohen because it's sort of like doing a jigsaw puzzle. You know, when you do a certain section of a jigsaw puzzle, you'll kind of match color and value and shape. That's exactly what a jigsaw puzzle is. And that's what I'm doing here too. And it isn't until you stand up and walk away from the puzzle and you look back at it that you realize, oh, that was a puzzle of, you know, a woodland scene, or, you know, suddenly everything takes on a different context. So I'm very involved in the pieces of the puzzle. All right, probably time to dry about now, I would guess. This was done with a pretty limited palette. Yeah, pretty limited palette, mostly ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, a little bit of cadmium yellow, Naples yellow. That's probably it. However, in order to make the grays, let's talk about that for a minute. In order to make the grays, I never use a neutral from a tube. I always mix my neutrals. And in order to get that gray, which will be cohesive with the rest of the painting, what I usually end up doing is mixing my 3, what do you call, primary colors together. And in this case, it would have been a little bit of ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and a Naples yellow. And I would have made normally I would make a lot of test dabs to make sure that that gray was the gray that I wanted. But you know, when you warm up once, and remember I said I'd done a painting before this, which came out badly. I was very warmed up. When I'm very warmed up, I don't have a lot of doubt just because I paint every day, and I have a strong sense of how to mix color and what it's going to look like on the paper. I also wanted to say, and it's late to say this in the video, but if you want to see this speeded up, you can touch the video on, because this will be on YouTube. Um, Touch the right-hand side of the screen at the top, and it will give you three dots. And if you press those dots, it'll give you choice to either go much slower or go much faster. Um, and so you can have control over that. What I'm doing there is I'm realizing that the lips aren't red enough, and I want to make sure I get a good enough red. I don't want it to stand out too much, but I want it to punch up a little bit. And I start doing that in some other places too. We're getting into final touches here. This is what I call color spots of value. If I can plug a color spot of value into a place and just leave it alone, I find that it makes my overall painting vibrant. And that's what I was doing with the red. And I'm not sure what happens next. Oh, I guess I'm still going to do some more. Yeah, but it's getting near the end of the painting here, and I decided not to put a background in at all. So that is Watercolor Leonard Cohen. Remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mass for value, mix for color. Please join my YouTube channel. If you have questions, you can ask me and I will answer them or make a video that will address them. Because I do know that painting faces is different than painting flowers, and that's different than painting landscapes. You know, I know that they're different. I mean, I know intellectually that they're different, but for me, they're all the same. You know, all the shapes are the same. I shouldn't say that. I mean, the shapes are different, but the strategy is always the same. Whoops, dropped the painting. gotta bring him back up. So I lost my train of thought on that one. Okay, so there he is. There's Mr. Leonard Cohen, who died a couple years ago, and I miss him terribly, but his music is alive and well. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. All right, bye-bye.